I want to jump to this next story. We got this from Timcast.com. Twitter announces plan to tackle misleading narratives ahead of midterms, vows to throttle tweets deemed incorrect.
Exciting.
Like they did not do with all the Democrats who were screaming that the election was stolen in 2016. They're now basically telling us they are going to decide what is true. The last election they did this, what did they do? They suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop information. They suppressed anything that was basically bad for Democrats. And now they intend to do it again. So I don't know if there's any point in reading in what they claim is going to be done. Their civic integrity project.
This seems like a really good news site. I think you maybe should read it.
No. But the point is, like, why? Who cares about what Twitter has to say about why they're going to be censoring and controlling the flow of information?
I'd like to hear a little bit about it. What's the official statement here, or at least the
civic integrity policy covers the most common types of harmful, misleading information about elections and civic events, such as claims about how to participate in civic process, like how to vote, misleading content intended to intimidate or dissuade people from participating in the election, and misleading claims intended to undermine public confidence in an election, including false information about the outcome of the election, Twitter said in the announcement.
Harmful. The thing about all that is you're allowed to do all that stuff. That's free speech. As long as you're not inciting violence.
Sort of. Not entirely.
I mean, you're allowed to tell people not to vote.
Yes, but I don't think you're allowed to defraud people by like telling them the wrong voting day.
Oh.
Right, things like that.
Okay.
So I follow a great account. His name is Political Math. It's Polymath on Twitter.
Polymath, yeah.
Yeah, I love him. And so he retweeted the CDC's guidance about the kids vaccine between 6 months and 5 years old, saying like, absolutely get, these young children vaccinated. And Polymath retweeted it and said, fire these people. This is unspeakable stupidity on the part of the CDC. That agency should be burned to the ground, which is opinion.
Yes.
First of all, it's opinion. And second of all,
it's a call to violence.
Well,
that's their interpretation.
No,
of it.
they call it misleading.
Oh, okay.
They don't call it a call to violence. But if you look at the numbers of people who have had their young children vaccinated for COVID between 6 months and 5 years of age, I wrote about this for Deseret like 2 weeks ago. The numbers are like 3% right now. Mm-hmm. So when I see a misleading tag on Polymath's opinion about the CDC's statement, it makes me be like, oh, there is something up there. Like, it backfires on them.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
because I see that and I think like, why are they gatekeeping like that?
But I think a lot of this is just failed. It's what's the right word? What's the politically correct word of saying your brain doesn't work? The people at Twitter are really dumb, and there are people at Twitter that are really evil. And then you have the government trying to get Twitter to censor people, which we've heard over and over and over again now. So what happens is they're like, hey, let's implement a policy. What happens? There's been several instances where people's tweets have been flagged and the fact check is totally unrelated. And it's like this really weird thing, like, huh? There have been several instances where guidance has changed and they've been like, hey, the CDC is like, we're revising our guidance. And then Twitter flags it as fake news. Here's what the CDC says. And then links to like an article from the year before. There was a famous incident on Facebook where I think it was the CDC's own website was labeled fake news because these machines don't work.
Yeah.
They don't know context. They don't have up-to-date information. And so if someone's like, I got breaking news, the CDC says X, they'll delete you and say that was fake news and you're banned because our official fact checkers have not yet published the information.
Yeah.
So when they talk about getting involved in the election, at what point, I don't even say it. I was going to say, at what point do we as a society do something about the interference and manipulation of our elections? The problem is there's no mechanism for solving this. And that's it. There's no political process for solving it. It's just there. Twitter is this corrupt, broken, evil machine. And I don't care if the intention put into it was good. What came out was evil. And what do? Antitrust? The people who run this platform are all out of their minds. Elon doesn't even want it anymore. And he said he hopes that he doesn't have to buy it. There's no saving these broken social media platforms. It's like, you build a machine that runs wild and starts destroying you, and you don't know what to do to stop it.
Well, you got to free the schematics so that someone will figure out how to stop it. That's why I advocate for freeing the software code. You can at least make it better and more interoperable. I think that
people aren't going to be able to take Twitter's code and then change Twitter. They're going to be able to replicate it and make more problematic versions of the same garbage.
Or better, and then the people at Twitter will be like, "Oh, we could do that. Let's change our
better."
code.
Does not mean better for society.
I know.
Better could mean generates more revenue, which means worse because now it's more algorithmic manipulation making people click and get brain
It
rot.
depends on who you ask. Better could mean more manipulation of the masses to get them to vote for who I want them to vote for. But I think better, I kind of think, allotropically. I think that's not the right word. But I think the betterment of the whole of the community, I don't want less constriction on who's controlling it, but I guess, I don't know. I'm not in the military. The military commander would tell you that you want to do the opposite with it, probably. That you want to control it.
Military. That's the only reason you're not in the military.
Yeah, I don't want to control people, but I mean, that's the military's job.
But I think with the Twitter, I think it's nice to believe that people would want to rally around common good and the betterment of other people. That's honorable and that's moral in a lot of ways. But why would Twitter... And I don't know a ton about freeing the code for sure, but why would freeing the code motivate people who are already...
It wouldn't.
Well, we'll ask a question.
Okay, so Twitter has a history of wanting to manipulate people and control the worldview. Why would freeing the code suddenly change their mind? Why would they suddenly, if someone else made something that was similar but more moral, why would they be like, that's a good idea, we should do that too? They could have done that already. But they chose not to.
The issue is... Twitter is not driven by morality.
Mm-hmm.
Moral platforms exist and they don't have traction. What works is addiction machines.
Yes.
Instagram knows this. Facebook knows this. Twitter knows this.
TikTok.
YouTube knows this. TikTok knows this. They know that they can give you a dopamine hit by making you feel good, and they have this built into their machines.
So what would happen is...
There are tech companies that offer a service to generate addiction. They'll say, are you building an app? Come to us, and we will build an addiction routine into your app for you to make your
slot
users.
Machines and stuff. They actually figure out when you pull it down, how addictive, how long do you want to wait until it refreshes?
How many times do you need to win?
How many dings are you going to get?
Right.
But what would happen is, if they freed the code, that guy number 2 would set up his own identical addiction machine, identical to Twitter, and equally as addictive. But on his thing, he gets to make his own terms of service. He'll say, on mine, you can talk about the CDC, say whatever you want. All these people on Twitter will try this one, and then they'll still be able...
No, they won't.
Why would they move? I mean,
because they're allowed to talk about the CDC.
But it's not happening. Okay,
well, they haven't freed the code yet. That's what I'm saying. Let me at least state my claim here, so you can argue it.
You say you claim all the time, and the issue...
And Hannah Claire asked me a question. I want to answer it. So then you make it so you can still see the people on Twitter from the new site. So you're not actually leaving. You're just expanding the process, and you're creating a marketplace of the terms of service, essentially, instead of a marketplace of who owns the code.
So is it
How does that not already exist?
Wait,
with Truth Social, with Parler, with Getter, with Gab?
They're not
with
interoperable.
Minds?
They don't interoperate with each other yet.
And why would they?
Well, bigger network effect.
That has nothing to do with freeing
more
the code.
diverse network effect.
The issue is you cannot make a morally better system. A system that improves like Twitter or Facebook is more addictive and manipulative and power hungry. So there's no solution, maybe antitrust, but Twitter is not a monopoly technically.
So
there other platforms
but it is
exist.
de facto. It for sure
exactly.
is.
And so there is no mechanism we have today other than all of the people of this country agree it's bad. So we pass a law saying ban Twitter.
So here's my question for Ian.
Prohibition.
So opening the code or freeing the code. So would this basically provide a window? Because here's what I'm curious about as a Twitter user. What happened with Alex Berenson? Can someone explain that to me?
Yeah, he wanted to be on Twitter.
No, I mean he was banned and now he's back.
He filed a lawsuit because he wanted to be back on Twitter. He didn't want to go on any other platform. He wanted to be on Twitter.
So it was the lawsuit that got him back
Yes.
on.
He had his lawyer on last week.
He settled
I had
with
no
Twitter.
idea. Okay.
Cool. They settled and he got his account back.
Interesting. So would freeing the code basically do what Alex did and open the door?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, you could. So Alex, if he got banned off Twitter, he could go on the new version and still see all the people on Twitter from his new version, and he wouldn't be banned off the new version.
Why would their database be granted to you? Why would you get access to their database?
Because you have the API. You'd have access. That would be.
Dude.
I mean, that would be the law. That would be what you would have to.
I'll tell you this right now. It's the reason why I don't like talking about this is that it literally makes no sense.
I don't think so, because the other option is breaking up the company like an antitrust,
Yes.
and that doesn't work because they still have the code. They can start a new one.
What I want to know is, who is the person who decided to ban Alex Berenson? What was the decision-making process there?
It is likely the government intervened. We don't know for sure.
So that's what I want to know, though. We don't know for sure, and I want to know.
And we'd love it if Alex Berenson could, tell everybody. And that's why people are really mad at him. because the story goes, and I don't want to put words in his mouth or the mouth of his followers, but what people are saying on Twitter in response to him is that he promised when he got to Discovery, he would expose what was going on. Instead, he settled with Twitter, got his account back, and then said, sorry.
Oh, that's yucky.
So people are like, he said in the future, there will be more to talk about in terms of government involvement and censorship and things like that. We heard from Naomi Wolf. She said that the CDC was going after specifically.
She was kicked off, right? She's not.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And so something. Oh, your bracelet
My
popped.
daughter's bracelet.
No.
So she was saying that it's. We've seen this before. Judicial Watch uncovered documents. I believe it was Judicial Watch that Democrats were going to these big tech companies saying ban these people. So it's very. At this point, I would say we're at probable cause or beyond. We have actual instances of evidence where the government is using third parties to violate people's First Amendment rights, but they're doing it circuitously.
So this was the lawsuit that was just filed by a whole bunch of the healthcare people. Or do you, I don't know a lot about it, but it was the I think it was Jay out in San Francisco, Stanford, Dr. Jay, and I can't say his last name, B. This is all new. I'm so glad when people don't know things that I don't know.
I'm so spaced out right now. I'm sorry.
No, so there's a lawsuit that was just filed, and it's funny. I actually just did a radio hit about it, and the host did the worst thing in the world to me. He's like, "Tell me about this." I'm like,
I
"You
will
have
not
to talk about it.
No, thank you.
You have to do the." And so I kind of I muddled through it as best I could, but there was a lawsuit filed by a whole bunch of healthcare people about the fact that the CDC and the government worked in conjunction with the social media companies to silence them.
Which is a violation of the First Amendment.
Yeah.
The government does not have the right to go to companies and say, ban these people, don't let them speak.
Yeah.
Now, the issue is, as always, it's cultural. Cultural enforcement is more powerful than law enforcement, and cultural drives are more powerful than any platform could be. You can spin up as many platforms as you want, from Truth Social to Gab to Parler to Getter, etc., etc. And people don't use them. They don't unify on them. And why? Why didn't Alex Berenson just go on Truth Social and talk to those people? Why didn't he just go on Gab and talk to those people? He wanted to be on Twitter, so he sued to be on Twitter. He accepted being on Twitter, and then he didn't give the people what they asked for because being on Twitter was more important to him because people are on Twitter.
Yeah, it's the people. It's not the platform.
Can I correct myself now that I've Googled it? Because I'm a little bit of a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
The person who filed the lawsuit is one of my friends, and I didn't know that.
Oh, cool.
Uh-oh.
My
Sorry.
surprise.
I'm really sorry.
Who dat?
Justin Hart. He's a data guy. He's a marketing digital strategist. He filed a federal lawsuit against Facebook and Twitter and Joe Biden and the Surgeon General for violating his First Amendment rights to free speech. He claims that the federal government colluded with social media companies to monitor, flag, suspend, and even delete social media posts that they claimed contained misinformation. He's being represented by Liberty Justice Center. I'm sorry, Justin. I didn't know that you were doing that.
I will say there have been many circumstances where big tech has been sued, and I am flabbergasted by the weak arguments made in such strong cases. So there's just been a handful that I don't want to call anybody out specifically to impugn their honor, but there have been very, very strong cases where you're like, wow, look at the details of this case. Clearly, the government said ban this person. And then when they file a lawsuit, they don't mention anything about they don't go after the government. They don't include them as part of the lawsuit. They don't even bring up the strong elements of the case as arguments. They just say something like our contract was breached. And I'm like, what am I missing here? Because I've talked to dozens of lawyers about various issues. And, to put it simply, I'm not a lawyer. I can't speak for why these lawyers have made weak cases that ended up losing or settling or just not accomplishing what they wanted to accomplish. But then when you listen to the lawyers on their shows and you listen to high profile people coming out and explaining what went down, they make it sound like they had a much better case than they presented. And I don't understand why they didn't go for it. I just don't know.
I don't know.
Or maybe they just didn't know. I don't know.
Inner workings of legal that you'll never know.
I don't understand why more news outlets haven't filed lawsuits against NewsGuard, for instance. They Breitbart has written articles being like, how dare you, NewsGuard? And it's like, why don't you sue them?
Why don't you sue them?
Yes, exactly.
You.
I know. Uh-huh.
I'm asking you.
And we said this last week. So I
don't watch every video.
No. I'm not saying you do. I'm saying yes, exactly, because we probably are.
Okay.
I've been in a dispute with them already. They violated their own standards. They violated their own correction policy. They've accused us of being irresponsible while holding themselves to a lower standard. Stating that we get an 82 out of 100, I say that's a statement of fact, that they've rated us on the basis that they are giving a factual analysis, but they are not. They don't follow their own standards or policies. And the reason I take this so seriously, people need to understand this. NewsGuard is used by advertising agencies and big tech to reduce visibility of your content. So if you so we're 82 out of 100. I mean, we're one of the best, but they arbitrarily gave our website a ding, even though our standards are greater than theirs.
Right.
USA Today fabricated 23 stories, and they say that's fine. I want to be careful here because there's some behind the scenes stuff related to serious malfeasance, but I have already issued a demand to them, and it is very, very likely we will be filing a suit. And I will probably seek crowdfunding to help other organizations that have been defamed by them falsely and smeared in violation of their own standards. And there's a few things people need to know about the elements of defamation. Actual malice. Did they know what they published was false? When it comes to opinion statements, this is probably going to be their big defense, that when we call you irresponsible, it's an opinion. We'll get to that. They've also issued several false statements and refused to correct them. For instance, on the label for our website, they claimed they mischaracterized a post. That's false. They injected words into it. That's very different from mischaracterization. That's a false statement of their actions. Defaming us, they accused our content of being fiction, and they did not, as per their own policy, which is their standard, admitted that they said we were wrong to say Timcast content is fictional. They did that. Instead, just scrubbed it from the article in violation of their own policies. So I'm particularly pissed off about this. But I'll put it this way. I've talked about Wikipedia's standards, how they put their own byline in it. I have no standing to go after Wikipedia. You give me standing on any of these platforms, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the full extent possible legally. And so there's been a long ongoing conversation with NewsGuard. For instance, they first tried to claim we were fake news because we accurately reported the contents of the Hunter Biden laptop. They tried getting us to editorialize our content. And I said, here's 2 NewsGuard certified sources confirming the laptop emails are real and verified. And their response was, you know what, this is a little bit murky, so we're gonna ignore this issue for now. No, you don't get to send me an email demanding we editorialize our content, and then you omit from your own article that you had an error in your own assessments. So I wait. When they published it with 6 errors right off the bat, I emailed them immediately and demanded retractions, corrections, and they have refused every step of the way to correct. NewsGuard fabricated a quote from me that pissed me off. You know, when it was accusing Tales from the Inverted World of being fiction, I said that is a false statement, and they changed it, but never explained, as per their own policy, what they did wrong. They called it a mischaracterization. I challenge that. That is a false statement of fact on their own part. I don't know how that'll work in court, but I'm really, really pissed off about this. Their rating system is arbitrary. They have dinged us simply because we are an independent media organization. USA Today fabricated 23 stories, and they give them a perfect score. Media Matters gets like an 80 out of 100, and they're a conspiracy crackpot website. Yeah. So anyway, I'm frustrated because I'm pissed off at these institutions, but I believe we have serious standing and reason to prove that there's actual malice in the insertion of words into a quote, knowing I did not say these things and knowing I never implied them. I'll give you exactly what it is, because they're trying to argue when we put words in your quote, we're implying something. We know you didn't say it. I told them, if you require a website to fact check every single quote from every politician, that is near impossible. But if that's what you require, from this, we will do fact checks on all quotes moving forward. They inserted the words that are false, changing what I was saying. What I was saying was you have demanded of us an impossible standard.
Oh my God.
By adding those words, they knew they were manipulating my quote. That is malice. And I want to see what they wrote when they were talking to their editors and lawyers as to why they decided to change the context of what I said. They did not admit, as per their own correction policy, they did that. So I think they outright defamed, libeled me, and so you have actual malice, and then reckless disregard for the truth in that they don't abide by their own standards. So In their fact-checking process, they 3 times incorrectly labeled my job at 3 different organizations, called our content fake, fiction and fantasy. I'm pissed off about that. And they labeled Cast Castle mundane, which is an opinion statement as per their own standard must be labeled. If they're not going to abide by their own standards, I am going to sue the ever-living out of them. And you know what? If in the end the suit is dismissed, I long for the day NewsGuard files in their federal response why they are allowed to have 0 standards for their own journalists, why they're allowed to fabricate quotes, why they're allowed to smear and defame a plethora of independent media organizations, and why they give perfect scores to outlets like CNN and the New York Times who publish fake crap all the time. Anyway, I'm pissed off about it. You can tell.
A little bit. I mean, I think a lot of it, your initial question, how you got started in all of this was why isn't anyone suing? And I think it's 2 things. I think that people don't care enough. You're very obviously not one of those people. But I think the other problem is that, and I think we saw it a lot with COVID, people are much more content to go along because they don't want to start things. And so even though they see things that are objectively ridiculous, like putting a cloth mask on a 2-year-old baby, people are afraid to speak up because everyone is a coward. And so I think that there's a lot of that.
We had Tucker Max on, and he said power likes to be hidden. You know, I was asking him, because we bring this up quite a bit, like, where are all the powerful people to just come out, make powerful statements, buy commercials, put up billboards, and challenge the things we know they're privately complaining about? Where are all the Hollywood celebrities that privately complain about this stuff but then don't stand up? There's a really great comic where it shows a guy burning a woman at the stake, and he says, "Psst, I just want to let you know I completely agree with everything you said." That's modern mainstream society, unfortunately. Yes. So I don't know, man. I imagine sooner or later someone's going to get pissed off enough with me and they're going to try and do something. We've already been swatted 9 times.
I'm a little nervous about that, actually, speaking of which.
Well, we have armed security and things like that. So.
I would say one of the other things I think happens is that it's expensive to
yes.
make your legal battles a priority. And I think there are other independent media companies who are probably being treated. I mean, this is particularly horrendous treatment of our organization. And of course, I hesitate to comment on it because I've been with Timcast since the newsroom began. I've been here for like a year. So this is a lot of my work that's being scrutinized. And I am very glad that you're willing to do something about it because I think we do hold ourselves and all of our journalists to an extremely high standard. That being said, I do know there are small organizations that would love to go to court but have to make the decision, can we afford to do this? Because it can be protracted, especially when you fight larger companies. They can drag it out. I mean, anyone who's sued Facebook for anything knows this.
Yeah, I think, though, I imagine there's a community of people who are willing to stand up and be involved. James O'Keefe from Project Veritas, they've crowdfunded the finances required to file a lawsuit, and they're going up against the New York Times. And regardless, this is what people need to understand, too. Winning doesn't mean having a judge bang a gavel and say for the plaintiff. Winning means getting these organizations to admit they're liars and they publish fake garbage. So all I want is I told NewsGuard right off the bat, how could you deem us irresponsible but have a lower standard than us? And they just said, too bad, so sad, go cry about it. Something to that effect. We make our judgments based on the fact that we're looking for you to correct these articles without us coming to you for them. And I said, we've corrected substantial articles without you coming to us and telling us to correct them. You found 5 articles that you had questions on, only one of which had a factual inaccuracy, which we corrected right away as per our corrections policy. It's arbitrary. There is no objective standard. And right now, NewsGuard is falsely claiming that we publish misleading information. Why? Because we quoted the president. We quoted Donald Trump in a news story, and they said that qualifies us for publishing misleading content. So when USA Today or the New York Times quotes Donald Trump, are they not publishing misleading content? The argument is Trump's quotes are misleading, right? Why is it only when we do it? Great. I want them to answer to a judge why it is that the New York Times can publish the exact same thing as us in terms of the reporting and the quotes, and that's responsible, but for us it's not. It's because I think there may be a motive that is more attuned to causing harm, intentional injury, and monetary damages to small businesses that might compete with the friends of these organizations and their investors.
Yeah.
Anybody who tries to create a new media company Anybody who tries to report news that falls outside of the official cathedral narrative, for some reason, has a really rough go of it. Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you this. In the newsroom, as Hannah Claire can attest to, I've been extremely adamant about abiding by every one of NewsGuard's policies, because I wanted to see that if we went above and beyond and did everything they deemed to be correct, would they honor that? And they did not, because they are fake. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.